Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Future Tech podcast series, sponsored by Arrows Group. I'm Charlie Sell, I'm the Group MD. Really pleased to have Florian with me, the CTO of DAZN, a sports streaming website. Think of Netflix, the sports world. He will explain a lot more than I can. But we're here to discuss a bit about his story, his background, and then thinking about emerging technologies and future job roles. Again, all aimed at the STEM graduates out there thinking about their first steps into paid work. So, Florian, thank you and welcome.
Hey, Charlie. Thanks for having me here. It's obviously always great to talk to the next generation about what they can do and how I got to where I am. You just mentioned DAZN. This is sort of my latest station in sports. I have been working with sports all my life in technology. DAZN, as you mentioned, is a sports streaming service. We are available in 9 countries worldwide, about to go into another 210 countries this year, which should hopefully make us a proper worldwide endeavor. Have a few billion people on the application by now. And it does what it says on the tin. It streams sports over OTT. It's an all-you-can-eat offer, which you can get in and out of monthly, where we think we have sort of the greatest offer for sports fans. And if you are one, you absolutely have to have it. And watch for it coming to the UK soon. Now, as I said, I have been working in sports all my life. I started out studying electrical engineering, and believe it or not, I had to do a few internships, and I did one in a company which built OB trucks for sports graphics, television sports graphics at the time. That was sort of the late 80s, and lo and behold, they liked me for whatever reason, I don't know why, and asked me if I did want to stay on and sort of earn my side money with them. At that time I was actually lifting parcels at night at UPS, so that was obviously a great improvement. So I said, yep, I'm going to do that. And yeah, this was a company which, as I said, built television installations, mostly for graphics. So I built one for the German soccer show. These guys then asked me to stay on. I turned out to be a managing director there pretty quickly, 5 years. We went on, sold the company. Had a few more companies, ended up with a company called Opta, which any sports fans here who are interested in sports data might know, was the CEO there. So we did all the in-depth statistics for soccer and a lot of other sports, rugby, for example, and sold those to all the media companies, sold that company to Perform Group, and that turned into DAZN, and here I am.
Wow, fantastic. So you're an entrepreneur as much as following the sort of the big headline ticket jobs then?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to find something which is actually piquing my interest. And while I shouldn't say that probably, I'm not even that interested in sports. I'm interested in technology which follows it. So when we started out doing sports data, pretty much everybody was saying, oh, no, who's interested in that? And all the coaches were like, oh, I sit at the side of the pitch and I know all of these things much better than anybody can ever tell me with data. But we looked at the US market and saw what data was doing there, even back in the late 80s, as I said, and said, okay, this is actually a way to tell the story much better and give the commentator ways to talk about things which are more interesting than the player's girlfriend. And that's how we started it. And it was a big success. And by now, obviously, as you probably know, no sports exists without a lot of in-depth data, going down to how far they run and how fast they run, and the heart rate and all of these physical things along of what they do with the ball. So I think that has been a big success story over time. And there's obviously always something new and something changing and things you can do. And that kept it very interesting, kept me on my toes, and yeah, got me to where I am.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm a huge rugby fan myself, and so seeing documentaries of Eddie Jones, how much data and analysis has now got into players, both in training and actually playing the game, and how much it's digested afterwards. It's fascinating, and I think
it's truly professional by now. I mean, it used to be that similar to Formula One, where Hunt was smoking a cigarette out of the car and got drunk the night before. That wouldn't work nowadays, you know. This is a lot of money and about winning very big tournaments, and yeah, it's professionalized by now, and that also means that you need a lot of data.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny when, with data, I think myself sitting on the other side of the table where we're continually looking at where the growth markets are. And for me, big data, cyber, AI, all seem to be interlinking with each other. And it feels like it all comes back to the capacity of hosting data, your ability to really maximize and utilize it. How has that sort of transformed your business, or is that part of where you look at data?
Yeah, it's obviously very important for us. I mean, you need to make smart decisions about what rights you buy and where you are, where you operate in markets, what the sweet spot is between quality and cost, and all these decisions we make based on the user data. And that is obviously simple things about what people watch and when they watch it, how long they watch it, split between live and VOD, but also what quality they watch it and which devices they watch it. I mean, we are on 25 platforms in market, so pretty much everything which is installed and has a significant market share, so 96% of installed devices. And also we have 16 payment methods. And the reason why we do that, I mean, it adds obviously on in the complexity of the product, is because we really very granularly look at what devices people have available and what enables them to be a subscriber in our service. So yeah, data is very, very important for us, but I think data is very important for everything, and that goes from things you wouldn't necessarily think about, like the farmer actually putting I don't know the English word, the dünger out, so making the plants grow and knowing where that happens, to obviously things like what Google does around advertisement, to Amazon figuring out what they can sell you, but a lot of that is happening around insurance, trains, all kinds of things. So it's really pervasive, it's really important for everybody. And you mentioned AI. This is obviously an emerging field. Nobody has seen true AI yet.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is more like machine-generated pattern matching, which nevertheless is obviously very powerful and very important nowadays, and gives you a few surprises if you look at the data, and it's a very powerful tool to find cohorts. That being said, I do think that we will probably at some point see true artificial intelligence. It's probably one of the emerging technologies which are really interesting. It might take us a few more years, but once that happens, it will be a massive step change in everything we do. But that's probably a larger discussion than what we have today.
Yeah. The Terminator franchise might come true one day. Then
hopefully not. But I mean, there's very interesting books on that, and it's something I follow closely. It's close to my heart. I think, along with VR and AR, is probably the next big wave. Together with a few things around medicine, which will probably change our lives drastically as well. But yeah, it will be really interesting to see. And I mean, I'm always saying, when I started working, a fax machine was something weird and wonderful, and you didn't have to write letters anymore and could sort of immediately send stuff. Wasn't that great? And then you obviously had the advent of mobile telephony and then the internet. And that is only 30 years. Yeah, that's one generation. And if anything, the development of technology has accelerated, and there's no end in sight. And even if it goes linear, imagine what it could be in another 30 years.
Yeah.
And somebody said sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And in many ways, that's already happening. If you think about these little devices which you carry around, everybody stares at all the time. Yeah. If you show that to somebody from the 50s, they would look at it and say, what the heck happened here? Yeah. So it's very interesting. And I think it's if you go into work nowadays, going into technology is something which is fascinating. I mean, there's so much to do, both from if you just want to work on things, but also if you're an entrepreneur and want to get things done and found a company, this is where you need to be. This is what you can do, because I mean, basic manufacturing of things has been completely commoditized. That's happening somewhere on the globe, and who really cares about that? The added value nowadays is driven by software. So you want to be where that happens and where there's software, be that from genetic codes to actual games or software which is running on these IoT things is happening. So that's fascinating and definitely a good place to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So thinking that, obviously the podcast is aimed at our graduates who are thinking about their first steps into paid work. They've studied science, technology, engineering or maths. Have you got any thoughts on or any direction, if you were advising them personally, where they would focus their first steps, type of industries or specific technology?
As I said, I personally think that AR and VR, along with artificial intelligence, are going to be that big things over the next decade or two. If you think about AR, for example, and the things this could do for us in our daily lives, from actually making it easier to repair stuff to entertainment in all its various guises, it's absolutely fascinating. If you have watched Ready Player One, you might have sort of seen a glimpse of what fully immersive VR could do. I think that is a step further out, and probably AR in all its guises is going to be sort of the slippery slope which is going to get us there. But yeah, that is definitely something I'd look at. But again, I mean, software is pretty much driving every facet of what we do. So there's obviously a plethora of opportunities out there if you want to play in that market.
And do you think security's got a key role to play in all of this as well, when we're thinking about cyber security and that needing to probably keep at the same pace as evolvements in data and AI?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that the biggest problem with security is probably awareness of people in this digital world, because there's way too many people who really live in the digital world but haven't understood the consequences and what it really means. Security is obviously very important, but in some ways the horse has bolted. If you think of it, the data which, again, Google or an Amazon have about you, then yes, they are not cyber criminals, but they have all the data, okay? So in a way, what worse could a cyber criminal do to you? Yes, there's obviously all things about identity theft and so on and so forth, but I think we still need sort of a grassroots movement around security, where people need to be way more aware of what their data is, the value of the data they create, and how they can protect and look after it. But obviously, I mean, a company like us, if you have a few million subscribers, it's obviously an interesting target. And people are trying to get in, people are trying to get at our user base, and you need to do the necessary things to protect them.
Yeah. And do you think there's a rise then that end customers or end companies like yourselves would look to build out your own cyber divisions rather than outsourcing it to consultancies or third parties?
I mean, we currently have our own cyber team, but we're not, for example, creating the software around it because it's too specialist. We buy that in. And a few things like the SOC we are outsourcing, the Security Operations Center, as it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to invest in that. There's too much synergies of scale there to do that ourselves. That being said, we are obviously taking a strong stance on security. We have to, both because we owe it to our customers, and also because there's obviously a lot of legal regulations by now, which can cost you a lot of money if you get it wrong, and don't do best practice. But again, the latter is surely a driver, but not the deciding one for us. I think the biggest thing which you can have in a business-to-consumer proposition is trust. And if you manage to lose that because you are the victim of cyber attack, for example, then that's really, really bad for business.
Yeah.
And therefore, we spend quite a bit of money on security.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating, and it's great to hear live examples. What you're actually doing as a business, and again, DAZN, how far it's come in such short amount of time. I can imagine the pace that you've had to evolve to keep up with the capacity of data, as we were just saying, and the complexity of cyber. It must have been.
It's a quite interesting proposition, because if you look at VOD, like Netflix, that's obviously well understood, and the big advantage you have there is that you have your content in advance, so you can actually pre-position and put it where you know the customers will want it. But with sport, you have two problems. A, it happens live, so you have distributed live, and they don't wait for you. I mean, if Champions League final kicks off, it kicks off, you know, no matter if you're ready or not. So yeah, it's a very interesting challenge, and using a medium which is not necessarily made for one-to-many, it's the internet, is making this is harder to do than it necessarily needs to be. But I mean, in reality, I have always said OTT would be the prevalent form of distributing content. And quite frankly, I have always been way too optimistic with it. I thought by now nobody would actually use a satellite anymore, but that isn't the case. But I think over the next 5-10 years, definitely will be. You don't have classical terrestrial broadcasting probably satellite anymore. I mean, satellite has its niche uses, of course, and you can use it with low-flying satellites to distribute internet and content, therefore. But I mean, if you look at what Elon Musk is doing there, Starlink, that's obviously quite fascinating as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I could speak to you all day, Florian, because you're obviously pretty passionate about all of this, and it really is the future, I think. So, look, thank you for your time. That's been really, really insightful, and I hope everyone who's been listening to this has also picked up some gems there. You know, AI, VR, AR. It really does feel like we've still got a long road ahead with technology advancements. So thinking about the latest skills and what you want to get into when you're leaving university, there's a plethora of areas to go into. But Florian, thank you. Really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, well, we wish everyone well. Great. So that's this podcast for this series. We will be posting out various others through both your university intranets, as well as on the YouTube channel, and snippets on LinkedIn. So thank you, everyone, and speak again.